Life. All right. Welcome everyone. Today's Saturday, March 28th, depending on your time zone. It is 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name is Chinwe Ohanale. I'm a member of the Ezibota team. And I already said I'm in California, or at least in the Pacific time zone. Um, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the community chat. Um, and now I'm going to ask that the other members of the chat introduce themselves. Beulah, go ahead.
Uh, all right, thank you, Shore, for that introduction. My name is Vila Osweke. I'm of Nigerian descent. Born and raised in Houston, Texas. I currently live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, of North America, the United States of America. I'm studying clinical psychology, getting my master's, and yeah, that's about it. Other participant?
Hi guys, my name is Alpha Karoma. I am currently living in Reading in England, United Kingdom. I was born and raised in Sierra Leone, and I'm studying for my master's in development and sustainable livelihoods. And I'm happy to be here. It's my first time.
Welcome. We're glad you could join us. So, for those of you who are kind of familiar with our community chats, we usually discuss a topic that we've been writing or dealing with on the website. This time we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to talk about three articles that are kind of recent, that touch on certain things that are going on in different countries, and use those as jumping off points to kind of talk about experiences, different experiences that we all have as Africans living wherever it is we are on this continent or on the globe. So the first topic that we're going to talk about kind of touches on something that's going on right now, and it's very relevant for those in the West African region, specifically Nigeria. There was an article published a little bit, I think on the 20th of March, on allafrica.com that was entitled My Successes Over Boko Haram, Enough to Earn a Second Term. And that was Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, the current president of Nigeria, who is contesting for a second term against Muhammad Buhari. And that's why I said it's very relevant, because the election is going on right now. And for those who have been watching the news cycle for a couple of months now, Boko Haram is very, very, it's in the news everywhere, especially considering the Chibok girls who were kidnapped last year, who, as far as I know, have not been found yet. So the question that is raised by this article, Goodluck Jonathan is saying what he's done with Boko Haram is enough to earn him a second term. So the question is it? Is what he's done enough? So that's the kind of the first question. Is it too little, too late? And anyone can pick that up if they want.
Can I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's definitely a little bit too
Yes,
late.
sir.
I think he's obviously seeking the opportunity to garner votes from his public, so he's waiting until now to pursue Boko Haram. He could have done it all those years ago. They've killed thousands of people, so why do it when the election is upcoming? So I think it's well thought out on his part to say, I've done something now, please vote for me and allow me to rule again. But I think it's a little bit too late from my perspective.
Mm. Beulah, any thoughts?
I don't even understand what he's claiming that he's done. It's a little bit embarrassing, actually. I I don't I don't get it. Um, Chinwe?
So here's I understand where the two of you are coming from, because especially in the West, in the Western world, it doesn't really seem like he's doing anything or he's done anything. And I completely hear, Alpha's comment about, well, it's very opportune timing that all of a sudden, if you are doing something, it's happening right next to the election where you are contesting for a
Exactly.
seat. So it's almost like you create the chaos and then you come in as superhero and then you clean it all up and it's like, well, see, I'm a superhero. Um, and I wonder sometimes if that's because we live in the West, because there's a very strong pro-Jonathan movement on the continent. I mean, people are saying that, like for instance, I think the Nigerian military, along with other West African nations, went in and have now progressively been fighting Boko Haram and have almost, quote, almost cleared the north of Boko Haram militants. So if you're looking at it on the ground, perhaps the fact that Boko Haram is gone is a positive. Whether or not it's opportune or not, it's a positive for Jonathan. So then I guess the next it kind of lends itself to that question, which is, does quality of governance matter? Because it's like, if all we want is whether you fix the problem or not, just get rid of the problem, then is that good governance? As opposed to, let's be proactive, and when the girls go missing, how about we go find them? Or when you find out about Boko Haram 8 years ago or 4 years ago, you actually crush, the the military the military section. So what does quality governance mean? What does it look like? Is that maybe where there's a disconnect between the way we look at it and the way people on the continent look at it?
Um, First, I think what he's doing is the right thing. I think obviously pursuing Boko Haram to try to end it. I think it needs to be constant, though, like you said. Why didn't he do it 8 years ago? Why did he not do it 5 years ago? Why is he waiting until now? So, good governance, I guess, is consistency as well. So he needs to ensure that what practices he puts in place are constant and are effective for the general public, rather than just to get people to vote for him. But in relation to a point you touched on about perception within Africa and within Nigeria, I currently study with loads of international students who are from Nigeria, and it's kind of split. Obviously, you've got the religious divide, and and the north and southern divide. You kind of notice that most people from the Niger Delta or the southern parts are very pro good luck, whereas the Muslim North,
Yes.
they want change, they want Buhari. So I guess you kind of link that into the religious aspect as well, how people perceive him. So he could be useless, but then if he's Christian and from the south, people will just like that, I guess.
Eula, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to veer away from the main topic, but I was actually reading a few articles that were combating the notion that Nigeria is divided, North and South, Muslim and Christian, which I always thought was strange because I've always come to understand that there is that very clear divide. And people were saying that people that were pushing the agenda that there's this divide were they lacked cultural context and they lacked historical context. I didn't look into it. Maybe I should have before bringing up this point, but I just thought that that was interesting, Alpha, what you just said, and then hearing about people's complaints, saying that people that drive that notion are trying to divide Nigeria, when I thought it was pretty evident that it is divided.
Okay, so kind of pulling on the two ideas about the perception from outside, the assumed, obvious divide of Nigeria, and perhaps maybe the possibility that there is no true divide. Then, if you take out the religious aspect, if you take out people voting based on who's Christian, who's Muslim, what then would either divide or unify people when it comes to the country and I guess governance, because I think you have situations like that in other African countries where there's some assumed or perceived divide, like the Hutsi and Tutsi, in Rwanda, or what happened in Sudan. You have these assumed divides, and then somehow that almost uproots the government. It automatically divides people. So if you were to take that away, what then does governance look like on the continent? And is that something that is even possible?
Um,
Hmm.
Interesting. If you take that away, I guess people don't really. Then I'm sure human beings they'll find something else to
True.
divide themselves for. But if you take that away, what does good governance look like? That is a good question. I guess people want to see actual change, especially when it's like less developed countries where the inequality is so big amongst the rich and the poor. People want to
Mhm.
see change. So just the basic amenities really need to be sorted
Mhm.
out: water, roads, access to like healthcare. So I
Mhm.
think that needs to be sorted out first. So if you remove all those other aspects, religion, cultural, whatnot, tribes, or whatnot, then yeah, the basics need to be sorted out. I guess to me, that's what I would consider good governance.
Beulah, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, as I've admitted before, hello, Heshi. Thanks for joining us.
There you go.
Yeshi?
Yeah, yeah,
I can hear
Oh,
him,
okay.
Beulah.
I just said thanks for joining. Okay.
for sure.
But wow, I forgot my train of thought. Oh, it just kind of makes me question. Vincent, could you get
Vincent,
headphones?
Oh,
Beulah, go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. But it just kind of makes me question, like, why we're trying to cram ourselves into a political system that might not be meant for us. Um, if you think about it, trying to like cram a square into a circle, when you just look at a lot of the ways that African nations function, you really have to ask yourself, is this a system that was created for us to succeed? And that's kind of what comes to mind. Like, do we really have to have two parties, one in
Mhm.
which stands firmly on one idea, the other which stands firmly on an opposing idea? Like, is that for us? And is that even like a realistic, productive question to ask? That's just what comes to mind.
I like that. Ihechi, so we started talking kind of about the election that I'm sure you are very aware of, um, and kind of talking about why people assume that the divide between Jonathan and Buhari is going to automatically fall along religious lines, and what countries would look like if you remove those divides, and what good governance would look like if people were to remove those divides and really look at what the country's, what the country needs. So, from your perspective, where you are, what do you think, is that even something that's possible?
well, I guess Nigeria is it's very religious and
Hmm.
very cultural, right? And it's weird that our primary culture, which we've had like since our existence, never really comes to play when it comes to politics. We adopt foreign religions, Islam and Christianity, and that makes us fight even more than we ordinarily should. Good. The two primary parties that the bone of contentions, APC and PDP, right? There are other
Hmm.
parties. There are other parties, political parties that are there still with their candidates, but they're like insignificant right now. They still have those Islam candidates and those Christian candidates, but the two powerhouses, APC and PDP.
Yeah.
It's not much of a thing, just like you asked, not much of a thing of religion right now. It's more personal, I guess. But from what you're really talking about, Buhari being an Islamic candidate and Jonathan being Christian, uh, it sort of plays out that way. The whole conflict, it's like this like Bula said earlier, having this party being Christian and the other party having an opposing line of thought or opposing principles. So I guess I don't exactly know how to put it, but it's just something that always comes, or it's just something that's really, I don't know, it's really deep faceted in Nigeria. It's just at the core. You can't take it out. You can't take it out. You know, whether you're a Muslim or you're a Christian, it doesn't really affect your ability to serve or your ability to help out in infrastructure, in unemployment and employment, job creation, and those things. It doesn't really have to do with religion. But hey, Nigeria, we still make it a big deal. Hey, he has to be a Christian for him to be able to do well. He has to be a Muslim for him to be able to do well. You know, just mostly religious fanatics are the people that tend to instill that, and unfortunately, those are the people. Fanatics are the people that are pretty loud. You hear them
Sure.
everywhere. Hear them everywhere. Hey, we can't allow a Muslim rule us. It's not possible. Not now. Muslims have ruled us so many years ago, and blah blah blah. Or he's Christian. It's time for the Muslims to rule. But those kind of things. Yaradua was a Muslim, and everybody loved Yaradua, right? When Jonathan took over, everyone was like, yeah, he's cool, no wahala. Then he's along the line, and a lot of people are like, no, we don't want Jonathan again. We want someone else. And Buhari comes up, as he has always been coming up. But hey, Buhari's Muslim. No, we can't have Buhari. We'd rather have Jonathan, even though he's Christian or he's not for our like what we want or what we need, or he has not done this or he has not done that, or what he's doing to us. So it's kind of like that. It's not, for me. It's not really about religion. It's just about your capabilities to do this and do that. But hey, we still tend to make it about religion sometimes.
Okay. So I think I think I get what you're saying, that whatever the distinction is, it tends to be deep rooted and deep set. And so even and this goes to Alpha's point that even if we were to take away a particular thing that divides us in our countries, we will come up with something else. And perhaps these are distinctions and arguments that have come up years and years ago, and every generation maybe picks its own thing. So maybe so maybe if it is a little too late, and he maybe it doesn't matter so much. Maybe the question is, whoever becomes president, how they operate within the system that we have, because maybe we as Africans or maybe we as people just enjoy divides too much, and the irony of leadership in any country is really what you do with those divides and how you rule, despite the fact that maybe human nature finds a way to create divides where maybe there shouldn't be.
Yeah. That's
So
that's really right. Human nature always breeds conflicts. That's people have been fighting since the dawn of time. Moses, Biafra, you know, it's always like that. So you always have people in conflict, people with different perspectives, and that's why we're alive. That's why we're alive. That's why we're human beings. I always say that we can't all be vanilla. Some people are chocolate, some people are strawberry. So, and that's what politics is about. You have to have conflict. Otherwise, hey, well, we just have one king, and the king has a successor, but it's really interesting to have the whole, you know, like a very strong political situation right now. APC is a very strong party. They have a candidate, who's very strong as well. And PDP, ruling party, has strong candidate and a strong foundation already set in the economy. So they're like coming head to head, and it's like a major battle right now. So, like I said before, it still boils down to a person or a candidate, regardless of who wins in the election, being able to deliver, regardless of
So,
religion, regardless of culture.
so
Yeah.
I guess then moving to a country where it seems from the West, it seems like they're doing a decent amount well. Let's go to Kenya. A lot of times, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I don't hear too much about unrest necessarily the way that I hear in other countries from Kenya. And Kenya is actually doing something really interesting. And this is a move by the government. This is the government. This is a government initiative. So in terms of good governance, this is a question. Is this the kind of thing we want governments to be doing for its citizens? Kenya became the second country in East Africa to instate free Wi-Fi. And they would be like, and so? But for our generation, you know, we live a lot of our lives through the internet. And you have to then wonder what kind of move, what kind of message are countries like Rwanda, Kenya, and South Africa, those are the three large countries in Africa that have done this as a government, give free Wi-Fi to the public. It just the company that has provided this service is the same country. I think in at least two of them, in Rwanda and Kenya, they're the ones who kind of create the infrastructure. They build the poles and things like that so that people can have free Wi-Fi in stadiums, on the streets. And it got me thinking, is that what New Africa is? Creating modern infrastructure first? And if that's the case, why does internet matter for Africans living on the continent? Like, what does that mean in terms of quality of life, in terms of connectivity, in terms of communication? I see Hitchy laughing, so we're gonna get to him last because I'm sure he has a lot of stuff to say about what it means for someone on the continent to have access to free internet. And that's also a question that I don't know if you guys know. What does it cost? How's the cost structure on the continent? Because I know here in the States, you can buy your bundle with your TV or your phone. So Vincent, we haven't heard from you yet. So what do you think about this new initiative in Kenya?
First of all, I'm sorry for all the computer stuff I had. My name is Vincent, born and raised in Cameroon, Nigerian originally. My last name is Chukwuemeka, so that explains it. Let me see. I was in the continent 3 years ago. In those days, let me put it like that, because within 3 years, a lot of things have changed. But in those days, it was expensive to actually, just actually go to the internet and, do something. I would have to aggregate everything which I have, within, let's say, a month or so, and then buy an hour at the internet cafe and actually send those emails and, reply those Facebook messages and everything. So it was difficult, and so it was different. But I am going to sound like a pessimist, maybe because of my backdrop in African history and everything. But I'm wary about companies like this. I would say if it showed that how many, the percentage of what liquid telecommunications had in it was wholly and showed that mostly they are dealing mostly just in South Africa and Africa itself, I would have really not have so much issues with it. But when the when the head of Liquid Telecommunication, his name is Ben Roberts. Not that I'm saying that it's always bad to actually have business with somebody from outside Africa, but when his name is Ben Roberts, I start asking myself questions. I am just a little bit, wary of situations like this. It's good, it's fine. Think about it like that. It's perfect. I mean, dude, if I was in Nigeria and this was, introduced in Nigeria, which I promise is going to be difficult, but I would be very happy. I would be so happy because just think about it. It's free Wi-Fi in Africa. That means you could do a lot of things you want to do. It's free Wi-Fi in a country in Africa. Let me not say Africa, in a country itself. But they've done it in South Africa and they've done it in Kenya now. It's good. It's wonderful. It's really, it's really different. But the issue about it is, let's think of the fact that we are equally helping these people. Like, let me not say we. Let me say we anyways. We are all Africans. Let me say we are equally helping these people. You should look at the demographics of Africa right now and the amount of people who are between the age of maybe 18 and 35 or 40. So basically, the question you ask yourself is, as much as they are bringing this thing to us, how much can somebody from us, community, Africa, us, Africans, Kenyans, Nigerians, Cameroonians, Sierra Leone, Liberians, everything, how much somebody from us can actually do this same initiative? You understand? What are those things that actually impaired them from doing these things? Was there nobody called Chukwuemeka Osueke, who walked into the office in Kenya and asked them that I want to do Wi-Fi in Kenya, and they said yes to him? Or was there nobody who was called Ndongo from Cameroon, who walked into a Cameroonian office and asked, I want to do this, and they said no to him? I mean, I'm sure you have maybe not seen. There's this video of somebody came in and asked for a contract, and they said no. The moment he bought some white dude, who was actually, this white guy was putting on was actually a construction worker in America, and he just said, dude, just come and go and show your face, and they gave him the contract. So how many Kenyans were refused this same opportunity and was given to Ben Roberts the next second he asked for it because he has a white face? White people looking at this thing, I'm not against you guys, but what I am saying is very, very simple. We have to look at those things equally. We are benefiting somebody who is going to actually do a lot of capital flight from Kenya out into another place. A lot of money from Kenya is going to go out. Think about that part. As much as they are benefiting from the Wi-Fi equally, they are sending out a lot of capital. Mm-hmm. That is how I see it, and maybe I sound a little bit pessimistic about it. But it was good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Think about it.
Alpha, I don't know if this is exactly up your alley, but I mean, since you do study development, what is your what's your take on that?
I mean, I'm just currently reading the article that you guys posted. Firstly, let's be realistic. Internet connectivity in Africa is still quite low. So there's not many people are taking it up. It's still quite a costly infrastructure to set up as well as to implement. So we need to account for that, really. But I don't know much about Kenya, but I think it's a good thing that they're installing that. But I do agree with what Chukem, I can't remember your name, Chukwuemeka, I do agree with what you're saying, that the facial thing, whether or not it would have been the same reciprocation if it was someone with an African face and a name. However, I do think it's also about the capacity, really. We are aware that it's lighter skin sometimes in Africa is preferred. I don't know why, but our people seem to prefer lighter skin, so that could be an issue of internal racism or whatnot. But that's a whole different topic. But in terms of internet connectivity, let me refer to a personal story. In Sierra Leone, they had free Wi-Fi at the airport, but it lasted like 1 year because it was too expensive, so they started charging people after the first year, and this was between 2011 2012. So again, it comes down to the cost thing that was mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, so before I add my 2 cents, I don't know if Rusoma, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello,
Yes,
everybody.
we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry I came out a little bit late. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if you came in as like right before, but we're kind of talking about an initiative by the Kenyan government
All right.
to add free Wi-Fi. And Vincent has said that while it's a good thing, what about the other Kenyans who might have been able to provide the service, or think about where the capital is going? The fact that the company's not an African company providing the service. Also,
Right.
little fact: the same company that's creating the free Wi-Fi also did it in Rwanda, which is another African country that has done the same thing, and they may or may not be the country who did it in South Africa. And then Alpha did bring up an interesting point about that preference for white skin and the possibility of internalized racism, and are these things that
Sorry, guys, that's me.
does someone need to evacuate?
No. I'm in a library. The library's going to close soon.
Oh.
Sorry, guys.
As long Oh no.
Just put me on mute for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna mute you really quickly. Okay. As at least we know he's safe.
Yeah.
So I guess what are your thoughts? What's the balance? The
balance-
ability to provide services, or go ahead.
Well, do you want me to talk about the Wi-Fi on universities or the race issues? Yeah. I don't even understand. Hello?
I don't know, Beulah, can you hear him?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's just some background noise.
Yeah, I think there's a
can hear
little
him
bit
too.
of background noise.
At my place?
Yeah.
I don't take it from him though.
Oh.
Oh yeah, you can hear the background.
Yeah.
All right, just 1 second. 1 second.
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
at
really
the
quickly.
community center. That's why.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we have an activity. Just wait 2 seconds, please.
Okay. Chewin, do you mind muting him real quickly?
He muted himself.
All right. Okay.
While Rusoma moves to or adjusts the background noise, Beulah, do you have any thoughts on what has already been said? Ihechi, I will come back to you. I have not forgotten you have comments.
All right.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting what Vincent said, because I've actually seen the cartoon that he was talking about. I mean, I think I saw it like a year or two ago, and it was just really comical, because that notion that the lighter the skin, the more credible the source, or the lighter the skin, the more intelligent, it's true. And whereas I do get excited because an opportunity like this would allow for a lot of young minds that don't have access to internet because it's so expensive to flourish in that field where, there's a lot of collaborations taking place online. It does kind of make you sit and wonder about the minds that have brought this idea, that without the restrictions of colorism or, racism, or just the notion that, we can't trust Africans, how many people have been stunted because of that? So I agree with Vincent, surprisingly. It is very bittersweet, but it's kind of like this is only one thing in which, yes, all of these people are going to flourish, but look who the credit is going to. And it's kind of one of those things like, here we are helping out these poor Africans that couldn't help themselves out. It's all the good that comes because of it is because of us. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just I just really thought that was an interesting point that she brought up and said. I do think that it would allow for young people to flourish. I think that he was maybe laughing because we asked the benefit of access to internet, and we know that young people. Probably in Kenya. I would just say probably. I'm not quite sure specifically, but we know that young people probably access the internet every single day and as often as they can. But I think we're talking more so about it being free and how that would allow young people to flourish. So I think that's why he was laughing. But yeah, those are just my thoughts.
Okay. Rosimo, now that you're back,
Yeah.
you want to go ahead and kind of jump in on the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, the access
Oh,
to the internet is like really, really important, and it's one of the things that I believe that really changed the situation of the diaspora as a whole, right? Because we were able to communicate with each other from one continent to another, the things that we couldn't really have, like what we're having right now. And before
mhm,
that, we had like the phones and so on, but the experience wasn't really that. I don't know how to say it. It wasn't really that fluid, right? And we in the Congo, like I think it was on February, we had a situation where some of the people I know, right, they are putting
mhm,
some sort of pressure on the government, right? So concerning human rights and also like the elections that are supposed to come, like in 2016, and
mhm,
basically what the government did is that they shut down their internet, the whole country,
mhm,
right? They really basically shut down the internet. You couldn't even like send like messages, and banks they couldn't even like do the business, right? Because they shut down all the internet around the country because they were scared
mhm.
of the communication tool that we had for doing something. So it's a really powerful tool if we know how to use it. See, if you know how to build spaces, safe spaces, where we can organize and also um, try to strategize every step we want to put into place to bring a change, right? At the same time, we also need to be aware of who's providing the services, right? Because there was a situation, I believe it was also in some Western African country where there were some elections, right? And
Mhm.
people like they texted the results like really fast, like, oh, we already know who's winning, right? What's
Mhm.
going on over at your place, right? So people were communicating, and you know what? Because the head of the country wanted to rig the elections, right? And they had a partnership with France Télécom, right? It's a company called Orange, but it's France Télécom, so it's a French communication company, right?
Mhm.
Telecommunication company. What they did is basically that they sort of managed to like to filtrate the messages, right?
Oh.
To filter the messages.
Mhm.
So it is a tool definitely for us to be used, but I believe that if you want to use it, we need it to think about it, like building up spaces like Ezibota, right? Is really really important
Right.
because those are spaces where you can share your thoughts, but also you can like I don't know, organize and like build something really important, right? But it needs to be a space that you control, because lately,
Mhm.
like I think it was 2 days ago, I was I don't know, I was on Facebook, right? So looking at some quotes on Facebook, so I could know who was watching my Facebook page on like I don't know, on a regular basis or not so much often. And the thing is that those tools are also tools that other people use to monitor us, so what we're doing, like how we're behaving, right?
Mhm.
And those
Right.
can be also used for email marketing, right? So you can know if someone opened his mail and something like that. So
Right.
do we really want to have that, right?
So, I guess so. You're saying that while it can be a powerful tool, depending on who has control over it, who has the ability to filter and monitor it, it can also kind of be a way to keep your population in check.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a valid point, considering what Alpha and Beulah reiterated, and even what Vincent brought up initially. The idea of who do you give access, who do you give, the contract for these kinds of projects, and does it really benefit African people to seek outside sources to bring in?
Hello?
Conversation, you had a very clear reaction to the idea of free Wi-Fi on the continent. So briefly, kind of just share your thoughts. What were you thinking when I introduced it initially?
Uh, who are you asking the question to?
Oh, Ihechi. I don't know if he
Okay.
heard me.
Oh, I didn't know you were talking about me. Well, we've gone pretty far, so um, I don't exactly know what line to come from, but I don't like saying Africa, but different countries have different ways they work, right? Just like America works differently from Canada or Mexico or Brazil. China works differently from North Korea or South Korea. Nigeria works differently from Kenya. Kenya works differently from South Africa. Just like that, or Egypt or Malaysia. Cities, different cities. But we've had on internet basically, we've had internet as long as every other part of the world, as long as the state has had internet, right? It's just that we have developed rather poorly. Right now you could just, like, here you said your TV's connected to your phone, connected to your laptop, your computer, and you just pay one bill for the three of them, and at lower costs, and you have like unlimited data on your bundle. But in Nigeria, I think it was just last year that I think one telecom company, they introduced unlimited calls. Like, you just pay a small fee, and you have unlimited talk time to um, a limited number of people, of contacts you have. You have to register that you can call these people, as much as you want, talk as much as you want, text as much as you want, for a limited number. But as far back as I can remember, in the U.S., in England, we've had unlimited calling, limited talk time and text time, right? But as well in Nigeria, they have had, you know, they never did advertise, but they have had like unlimited talk time, unlimited text, but it wasn't really advertised because they would probably be very expensive back home. That's why they never really, 24 hours, 24/7, you have those. But I'm just saying that we have had internet as long as every other part of the world. It's just that the development is totally different, I guess. Like,
But
so,
but
yeah.
Ihechi, I don't think that Chinwe or the article is suggesting that African nations haven't had internet. It's the fact that it's free. There have been a lot of people that have been robbed the luxury, the pleasures of the internet because it's so expensive. So the fact that it's free is giving
Right.
access to people that usually wouldn't have access to that information, to those connections, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just getting to that. Okay, that's why I was like, I don't exactly know where to come from because, we've gone pretty far. You guys have talked a lot about it, but like in Kenya, I did not know. I know Kenya is pretty developed based on IT and all, and free internet. Someone's gonna be paying for that shit. Like, seriously, either the government or some benefactor or it's charity. I don't know. And just like in Lekki, Lagos, right? There are two tools when you're going from the mainland to the island. Lamidi. When you're going from the mainland to the island, right? There are two tools. You have the first toll and the second toll. They have this contract with this company for, I think, 15 years. I don't know. So people pay at the first toll, but they do not pay at the second toll, right? And I see that as something like that's happening in Kenya. You don't pay for the internet right now, and I don't know who said it. I'm sorry. This is like my first time of seeing you on this hangout, or my first time of being on hangout. After a while, people would probably start to pay minimum fees for those kind of things. That's the ground plan in Lekki, Lagos for the second toll. After several years, they will start to pay fees at the second toll when you're going into the island, right? So an investment in an FDI in Kenya on free internet, it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal for one, but I'm just for the fact that if someone is investing like that in an African nation that has either poor Wi-Fi or just wants to make an investment to provide people that have not had internet, and provides it free, it's pretty cool. It's good. It's good for development. It's good for infrastructure. It's good for business. It opens the place to the world. I don't know if it's the entire country of Kenya that was provided with that service or just a particular city, maybe the capital. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'm just saying that if it's free now, it's more like a business investment, you know. 'Cause
And that's actually a good point that you mentioned that, because the article does say that the reason why they're so excited in Kenya for the free Wi-Fi is because it'll increase the number of people who will be buying smartphones in Kenya to take advantage of the free Wi-Fi. So
Yeah.
that is a valid point that, it does boost these kind of
It boosts
um,
output. Yeah, it's a change. It's a
right
basic. Yeah, it's a
for
basic.
related products. So
Yeah. So it's just like that's like a major business investment. Facebook is trying to do this whole internet via drone things and satellite
you
internet
know,
via, I think, Google as well.
right. Okay, so I think
Um,
from the little discussion that we have had about the Wi-Fi, at first it seems very benign and very exciting that, oh yay, Kenyans get free Wi-Fi, but then there are these other layers that we would
That's racist.
kind of want to pull back and say who's providing the service, who has access to the material that's crossing through the wires and the Wi-Fi. Why are these people getting the contracts and the benefits for this service, and why aren't others? And I think those are all valid points, and maybe the Kenyans will ask their own questions, or maybe they'll just be so excited about the Wi-Fi that they won't worry about it too much. But I think that they're all valid points, and we'll see if this is a trend that starts to develop on the continent, where governments start to provide services like this, or maybe only certain countries do and certain countries don't. Moving off the continent briefly, as our last topic, so I guess it'll be brief and then ending, is the last article about a program that's developing in Minnesota in the United States. And I don't know, for those of you who don't know, Minnesota is kind of in the Midwest. So is it in the Midwest, Beulah? I consider Minnesota the Midwest. Okay, Vincent is saying yes. So we'll go with that. We have 2 votes from Midwest. So it's not kind of one of the or states that people think of as like extremely diverse or multicultural necessarily. So I think for me, when I read the article, I was very surprised that they had a program like this. Essentially, the program is a teaching program that helps people from East African nations like Ethiopia and Somalia become teachers. And the idea behind that is that as immigrant populations come to Minnesota, because presumably they are immigrants from East Africa that are there, those teachers who've been trained from those countries can now teach the new immigrants. And that is a really interesting idea to me. First, because it's in Minnesota. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep saying this. It's in Minnesota. And secondly, because it's kind of the stuff that we talk about here. Feeling isolated and being taught by people who don't understand your culture, or, having that initial disconnect between what you're trying to learn and the examples that are being given, the books you're reading. It's kind of like being taken out of one context and plucked in another. And this program seems like a bridge. It's like Minnesota is trying to build a bridge for immigrants so that they can learn better. And so I guess the first question, because I've already told you about my first impression, is what was your first impression when you heard about this or read the article or just right now? Like, what is the first thing that comes across your mind when you think of a government-sponsored program to teach Africans to be teachers to teach future immigrants from Africa? Beulah, you look puzzled, so I'm going to go to you.
To who?
To you.
Oh, oh, to me?
Yes,
Well,
yes, Beulah, to you.
I really didn't hear. Oh, okay. So to me, I don't want to talk over anybody. Are we, are we good with it's to me? Okay. I'm just gonna talk.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
go
know.
ahead.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, I mean, to me, upon hearing that, it's definitely exciting and it's empowering, and I think it can reduce the feelings of isolation that people experience when they come to the United States because it is very isolating, and there are a lot of people who see your struggle in adjustment, they equate that to stupidity, which is, let's not even get into that. But speaking about my experiences specifically, I think it would have been great. Um, and when my parents migrated to America, they didn't need people to necessarily teach them how to speak English or teach them school subjects, but it would have been great if they had that bridge because I felt like they would have held on to a lot more cultural aspects than they did. I'm not saying that it was intentional, but I don't know how to speak my native language. And he don't say anything. But I didn't know how to speak my native language because my parents were so set on using English because, you're an American now. So they didn't really think, oh, let's make sure that we teach our kids our home language so that they're able to speak it because they live in a new country. So I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but if something like that would have existed the time that my parents had migrated, I felt like our home they would have been more intentional in making sure that they maintain because they wouldn't have been so burdened with trying to assimilate or like trying to adjust to the new country. There would have been a support system that understood where they were coming from and understood what they needed and how difficult it was. So I think it's great to hear. Of course, there's pros and cons to everything. I'm sure that someone will say, well, they're trying to X, Y, Z, do it X, Y, Z. But I don't know. I think it's encouraging. And the fact that it's in such a white state is amazing. And hopefully they're able to move that to more states that have higher populations like, Houston or Texas and Nigeria and like DC and everything. So that's great.
I agree. How about you, Vincent? What were your first thoughts?
Well, I live in the Midwest. You're right. Minnesota is like 3 hours away from me, so I'm in Iowa. So the thing is, before I go into that, I did listen. I don't know if you guys have, but you guys must. It's the interview Brilla gave on Diaspora Truth. It was really good. If you have not listened to it, you should. Um,
Okay.
and you could. I mean, I know I don't want to pick on Brilla. I'm not trying to pick on you. Don't. I wouldn't do that today. But it was interesting to like hear her talk about her struggles, especially when it comes to the language part. You understand? And apart from that fact, she was equally. I'm sure maybe she didn't actually explicitly say so, but you could see her trying to explain to the lady who was interviewing her that she had so much issues which she would have loved to know at that point. If somebody from maybe Nigeria or somebody with some background of Nigeria would have been teaching her, you understand, maybe some background knowledge of her parents' origin. But when I read the article that was on the what we are supposed to talk about today, it was really good. I really liked it actually. It's interesting. I've been to Minnesota and Minneapolis and Paul quite a number of times, and there's quite a vast amount of people there from the eastern part of Africa. There's a huge population of Sudanese in Iowa, especially Des Moines. There is a very good population. You could find a lot of Sudanese Ethiopians in Minnesota equally. So the fact that they are taking people who are teachers from back home, bringing them here or asking them to come and be part of the teaching core in Minnesota it's marvelous. I met someone this past weekend who used to teach French in a community school, and I mean you could hear from his equally what he was telling me was that the issues that equally emanate from this immigrant population is when you are being asked to technically leave everything for. You understand? So you don't have any. There's no fallback at the end of the day. You find parents who speak perfect, around me, who speak perfect Igbo, speak perfect Yoruba, speak perfect other languages, but the kids end up, just speaking English. You understand? And those are the issues which I'm sure this program is going. It's saying, oh, we are going to solve these issues. We are going to make sure that at the end of the day, if that transition, from being all Sudanese or maybe all the language and culture and to being American, it's not going to make you have those fallouts. Those things should not fall out. Your tradition, your language, examples from back home should not fall out. So it's a good program, and I'm sure it's going to be really awesome. I think it's if there's something which Willa said, which is very important, is if they could take it to those more diverse areas like Houston, maybe California somewhere, which is, I don't know California very well, so I can't pinpoint a particular town or city that has a lot of diverse population, but it's good. It's really good, actually. I hope they do it in Iowa, because the first time I came on this chat, if not Brilla, I think Chichi asked me if there are black people in there are black people in Iowa, and I was laughing so hard because
there's not. No,
there are black people in Iowa. There's me and me, so.
No. Okay. Well, to be honest, I'm surprised that there are so many positive reactions to it, because I didn't know if someone would feel like, oh well, how do you know that the immigrants who are in the program have control over how they teach, or how is this not a way to speed up the assimilation process? So I'm glad at least there's a general appreciation for the fact that there is something bridging the gap for people who are in need. And I'm gonna change the question a little bit for you, Rusoma, because even with these benefits in terms of teaching, why might a teacher or professor, I wasn't sure how many, like what levels they were training the teachers for, but why might someone who's in this position from the same culture or country be better at anticipating the kinds of services that an immigrant may need that aren't necessarily academic? Because like at a typical school, they'll tell you, oh, okay, if you need like financial aid counseling, go to this person. If you need academic support, go to this person. But there are other services that I feel like immigrant kids, whether you're an international student or you just like moved here, are going to need. So why is it that someone from your own culture, or at least maybe from your own region, might be a better person to learn from, interact with in that space than someone that's white or not from your culture? And that's a question for Rusoma. I don't know if you heard me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm good. So basically the situation is when someone of your culture, originating culture, teaches you the basic, the important stuff in the United States, for instance, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So, well, that I believe that's a great idea, but there is a question on so it always relating to who's financing it, right? Because the person who's financing it, just like any type of channel, like television channel or news channel, right? Mm-hmm. If you know that those people who are more capitalists that are financing it, you may be pretty much sure that you're gonna have like the rhetoric of a capitalistic way view of the world, right? And
okay,
is it something that we really want to have? So if we want to bring something new to the country that hosts us, right? Do we want to be taken as a as a as somebody who's gonna be used like this, like okay, I'm gonna put you there, I'm gonna put you there, or I believe that we also have to learn that the immigrants also have something to bring, right? They also have something to bring, and
Mm.
before that, they used to have, like, some countries have their cultural center, right? And those cultural center can
Mhm.
be also be they can be accessed through the internet, right? So
Mhm.
it's really important to stay to keep your center, in the sense that your culture, your view of the world, right? It's also important to stay, like, open to everything you see, open to everything you see. But you know what? At the end of the day, um, what you're gonna do and how you're gonna relate to everybody uh, is gonna depend on
Okay.
your identity and your culture, because the identity or culture also has, like, a name. I don't know if you've read a woman called Marimba Ani. She wrote a book called Urugu. Does
Mhm.
it ring a bell to you?
Not for me. I don't know for anyone else.
Okay, that'll be a bit difficult to explain that, but still, she's basically saying that there is a static value to culture, but also an active value to culture, right? And certain ingredients in your culture helps you behave in a certain way in a society, right?
Okay.
So if you, let's say, integrate or assimilate to the Western culture, which has its benefits and also its wrongdoings. I'm sorry about that, but there are some stuff that they don't really make sense if you look at clearly, right? So do we want to? I don't know. Do we want to keep uh, a coherent view of the world, or do we want to put some bricks that are used for this, other bricks that are used for that? I don't know if you understand me clearly.
So I so tell me if maybe I'm getting this right. So the
Yeah,
first part is, you know, there's a value that is added by having the immigrant possibly teach other immigrants because it creates a context. If you
yeah,
learn from someone
exactly.
who is, capitalist, they're going to infuse whatever they're teaching into the
Yeah,
way that they
yeah,
teach you.
yeah,
And so somehow that can lead to you taking on those views. But then
exactly.
there for everyone who comes to this country as an immigrant, they're coming with that same kind of context. So it's like you have a cultural context that you come with. And then when you immigrate to these
Hmm.
other countries, and you receive all this information, there's also kind of a decision you have to make as to how much of your culture that you're coming with you are going to maintain, keep, and how much of the new culture that may be beneficial or not are you going to incorporate into who you are and how you interact with the world. Because then you can either maintain an open, expansive view of the world that
Yeah.
incorporates your culture, or you can maintain a closed view of the world that is only informed by your culture.
Well, that's the
Is that
point.
kind of what you're
See,
saying?
yeah, but what I want to bring is that the person who travels, like, from one place to another, is
Uh
the
huh.
actually the person who has a wider view of the world, right?
Okay.
See?
So
So
just the act of traveling can widen your view of the world. The
yeah, of
act of
course.
moving from one place to another.
Yeah, because you have the
Yeah.
possibility.
No,
Yeah,
that makes.
yeah. You there are a lot of stuff that um, like stereotypes are really important when you write stuff, right?
Okay.
Right.
And you want to make your book understood by people, you need to use the stereotypes that are used on a sell you book, okay? Mindset of the people, right? So culture actually has a way of seeing the world that is really um, enriching, right? It enriches the country that is hosting the immigrant. Actually, the word immigrant is
Okay,
also like
sorry.
already,
I
yeah.
don't want to break you off. Is anyone else having trouble hearing Usoma? Because I'm having trouble hearing Usoma.
Yes, a little bit.
Uh,
Okay, because it's not clear, so I can't completely follow your
okay.
thought.
No, I can
And I
hear you
feel
now.
bad because I don't want to just sit here and say yes, 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 because then what's the point of the
Yes,
discussion?
yes,
You know,
yes,
there's
yes.
no real exchange.
Yeah, yeah,
Chima,
So,
Chima, Chima,
um,
you mind if we toss the combo over to Alpha? I just wanted to, I'm
yeah,
interested in his
that's
thoughts since he kind of, yeah.
so.
So, you mind just giving me a brief recap of
No
what
problem,
the
Alpha.
topic is about?
I'll try and get you up to speed really quickly. So
Thank you.
basically, we moved on to the last article, which was about in Minnesota, they've created a program for right now it's for East Africans who immigrate to Minnesota to teach incoming immigrants from East Africa. And the idea
Okay.
is to help kind of bridge the gap, make it easier for the new immigrants to learn, and also kind of to, I guess, to create a bridge so that people don't feel the stigmas, the difficulties that come with kind of exploring a new country on their own. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so the question that we are on right now is why might a teacher or professor, depending on the level of education you're at, from the same culture or country as you, better anticipate the direct needs that a student may need. So other than, career services or financial aid, how is someone from your culture going to better serve you as a student, or in their case, better serve them as students new to the country?
Okay. I mean, I guess the fact that they will be familiar, they'll be seeing a familiar face, someone who's experienced the same or similar things that they're used to, and the cultural aspect, I can see the positive aspects of that. But besides that, I don't think there is much use for it, to be honest. If they're children, say for example, if they're school age going children, then they will fit in either way. Like I myself, I came to England after the Civil War, so I was about 12 years old, and we
Mm-hmm.
settled and we fitted right into society and integrated ourselves. So I think, again, as you said, depending on age, it might be different. So if it's a adult learning course, for example, then perhaps it might be better if they did have someone from their own country so they can
Mm-hmm.
actually quickly assimilate as such and gain experience from that person who's already been in that country. But if it's children,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it makes much difference for children, to be honest.
So I think it's interesting the direction that or how you looked at that, because you looked at it more in terms of how how much easier it is for someone to incorporate themselves into their new country, whereas I think both Vincent and Beulah looked at it as positive ways to preserve original culture without then handicapping yourself in the new culture.
Okay.
So it
I
was
mean, I
almost a
think.
way to,
Hmm,
like, go ahead,
sorry,
yeah.
yeah, I think. I mean, it's going to be quite hard to preserve the culture that they came with if they're young, anyways. There will be they'll be used to the new culture. So by the more they live in this new country, the more influenced they will become by that country's core concepts and cultures.
Hmm.
But if they have strong family ties and um, family ties not only in the new country but back at home, then I don't see why they will lose their culture. Like even language, for example, I don't see why they will even forget their languages. Like I certainly haven't forgotten my language.
That's for the adult, right?
That's for the children. For the children. For the adults, definitely, I don't think they will lose the language, but I don't think they'll also lose the culture. For the adults, I think it's a lot harder for you to lose your culture if you're a fully grown person. I mean, you might get influenced by the new culture, and your ways might change slightly, but you're not going to be that much different, regardless of which culture you go into. You will probably adapt to fit into the new culture, but I don't think your old culture will be diminished in any ways. Whereas children, obviously, they will probably lose a lot more of their culture that they're used to, and then perhaps I can see the point that they're coming from. Then it might be useful to have that teacher as another means of reinforcing that cultural aspects of things. But then they have their families, I'm assuming, anyways, or hypothetically, they have their parents that who should be able to maintain the old culture.
Vila, were you going to say something? I thought you were.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see what Alpha is saying. I would speak on my own personal experience. I think for my parents, it just wasn't on the forefront because there were so many things to transition to. And as Chinwe has alluded to, as several people have alluded to, it's difficult when you're on your own in a new country. So for my parents, when they started giving birth to children, maybe they didn't have it on their minds that I need to teach my child how to speak Igbo because if I don't, when they're adults, they're not going to know. You know, I don't think it was intentional, like, oh, I'm American now, only American, you know, because I still get chastised for not being able to speak a language that was never taught to me. But anyways, that's besides the point. So I definitely see what you're saying, but I think that's kind of like where Vincent and I were coming from. It makes people more comfortable, and for me, it seems like they have less to worry about because there's kind of like a blueprint and then someone who looks like you, someone who understands your experiences that are helping you read that blueprint. So there's a level of trust that's innately there as opposed to some white person saying, welcome to America, this is how you American. Does that make sense? Or UK, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, like you're English. Yeah.
Western. So before I get Rusoma, I'm going to. So I had a last question under this, but it's a question that's I know is going to take a while because having talked with you guys, I know you guys are going to have some thoughts, and we're probably going to want to parse it through. So what I'm going to suggest, and you guys. Let me know if you're interested in this. When Rusoma finishes, I'll pose the question, and then I'm sure you guys know that there are other ways for us to communicate. I would challenge you guys to continue the conversation with that question offline, and maybe get your other friends talking, because the point that Alpha brings up in terms of culture and maintaining and not maintaining, and who is going to help you maintain culture ties very nicely into this question, but it also makes me wonder about the different histories between the UK and America, because that perception about I don't know exactly how you put it, but the idea that what is the value of the program in maintaining the culture, that kind of struck me as is there may be a difference because of where you immigrated to. You know, what Western nation did you immigrate to, and does that history play out in the different ways that people assimilate? So I will let Rusoma talk, and then I will pose the question as the last little bit, and then we'll see if if it's something that you guys want to, continue chatting or writing or, communicating offline, because this is a really great conversation, and I'd hate for, it to be like, okay, that's it, go about your business. Rusoma, go ahead.
Yeah.
And share with us what you're thinking.
I had imagine the situation the way around, right? If an American goes to, I don't know, to Somalia, and he has to go through a process where the Somalian government takes one American who's like wandering around to teach him what it is to become a Somalian, right? So it really brings a situation where who's dominating who, right? It's a question of who, if the country is really a multicultural country, or if it's a country that accepts diversity, but not really, right? So the approach is really interesting, but you need to understand what is inside of the curriculum, the curriculum, because you are going into a country that is not that innocent, right? In terms of how they relate to the other, right? So we need to be aware of that, and if we want to have a government-sponsored a program to become an American, I wouldn't be like surprised to see people going out of that program that become racist towards their natives and something like that, right? So we need to be really careful with that. And the other thing is that there is a situation where it should be the community's job to do that, right? Because yeah, I mean, you should build a cultural center. That's what actually all the all the colonizing countries did, because they knew that they couldn't go to any other country like that. They built cultural centers, right? To keep with their view of the world, right? Anyways, whenever an African to France, Belgium, England, United States, or Canada, the first thing he's gonna do is look for work. And then when he's gonna start working, guess what? His children, they're gonna be left, so to say, they're gonna be left alone, like with TV and so on, right? He's gonna learn stuff that he's gonna see around the place where he's gonna land. And if he lands in a neighborhood where, well, yeah, some neighbors can be tough, right?
So for you, it's not just having the program. It's really about the context of the country, the state, the community that person is dropped into, because there is real life to be lived. And I think Beulah hinted at this too. Her parents started having children. There was no intentional decision to say, let's pass on our culture. And for a lot of Africans who immigrate, that the priority is to make a living, to take care of yourself and maybe those who you've left behind. And so perhaps the idea that a community should come together and educate its young, maybe that idea of a village, a child is raised by a village, that identity, that idea, maybe that should be a component of a program like this, and not just, again, rely on the education system to do maybe what we did naturally in our home countries, where one person is unable to, pass on the knowledge, someone else does. And I think that has some, I understand that, because you're right, nobody knows really what the curriculum is, how it's being constructed, and what the ultimate goal is. But I will say still, I think it's a good starting point that someone recognized that there is a gap, there is a struggle, and that at least this is one way to empower a community to help itself. So that's what I would say. Now, for the last question that I'm going to open up, and actually this isn't for people who are watching this, this question is also open to you. So if you couldn't make it to the community chat and you really are just like, I want to say something, I've got something to say, you can answer this question, or if you really want to, you can answer any of the other questions we've addressed today. But this question ties in a little bit of that context, that question about where you land. And Ihechi, for you, because you've lived in Nigeria for a long time. I want you to kind of think about it. If you were to move to a Western nation, or if you were to move and go go to school in Pennsylvania with Beulah. Like, what would this happen? What would this be like? So the question I have, the last question is, what does learning from someone like you do for thoughts of isolation and not belonging that immigrants have? And how is that similar or different from the way a black person may feel learning from and in a school that is majority white? Because, and a little context, there was for those of you who don't watch podcasts, there's a podcast called This American Life, and they did a piece about black kids who grew up in the Bronx, and they did like pen pals with kids who went to a public school, and it was predominantly white. I will repeat the question, Vincent. And the kids basically were communicating with one another, thinking they were very much alike. And then one day, the teachers from the two different schools decided they were going to bus the kids from the Bronx to the public school. And there was a serious and visceral reaction. The kids from the Bronx got off the bus, and the private school kids, the private school they went to, looked like a university. They had a courtyard. They had a freestanding library. And a lot of the kids interviewed 10 or 20 years later said it felt like they were in another country and in another world. And so on a small scale, it's like being taken from the world that you know to another world. And one girl started crying, just like hysterically crying, because this is what she learned on television high school was supposed to be like. And that wasn't what she saw. And when she got there, people treated her differently. She felt like she was an imposter, that she wasn't supposed to be there. So there was a visceral feeling of isolation, of not understanding, of not being worthy and not fitting in, not like she just wasn't meant to be there. And so I asked this question because there's a very strong relationship in terms of other in the U.S. that is tied to slavery and tied to a strong historical context. But we've been talking about, voluntary immigrants, people who go to other countries looking for work, looking for opportunities. And I just want you guys to think, what difference does it make for someone to be taught by someone who looks like them from a culture that is the same as theirs, and how does that alleviate those feelings of I don't belong here, or I'm the only one here, or I'm isolated? And is it similar? Is there a bridge there that can be built between new immigrants and that feeling and involuntary immigrants, people who came here through slavery? How are those situations, how are those contexts similar? So I don't know if let me know if that question makes sense or if it's not clear. But it's kind of like put yourself in the other person's shoe and then ask yourself, what's the value of having someone who is like you than to teach you and to kind of bring you into the system? Got it? Everyone good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got it.
So that's the question you guys can take offline. And then the last thing I'm going to ask for you guys before you leave is tell me one story that is in the media or not in the media that you wish was discussed more often. Why are you laughing, Ihechi? You're always laughing at my questions.
Can I say something?
I just thought about something interesting related to what you said.
Okay.
What you asked, yeah.
So, you want to go first, or do we want to let Rusoma go because he raised his hand?
Okay.
Okay, how about Ihechi? Go ahead. You've already started talking.
Oh, okay. Like, did you mean on your last question or the one before that? On the education or on
No, I just mean in general. In general, is there something in the media, is there a news story that people don't talk about that you feel like should be talked about more often in relationship to Africans in the diaspora on the continent?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead, man.
All right. Okay.
Usama, go ahead.
There are youth like us who are organizing like in the continent right now, and I've met one of the guy who's called Ben. He's from the Congo. So he basically came here and explained to us. He was in the United States, by the way, also, and he explained us how like when the government shut down the internet for more than I think it was three weeks or 2 weeks. How were people organizing and so on, and they went back to Congo and they organized with people, youth from Le Balai Citoyen, which is in Burkina Faso, and also other youth from Senegal, from the group Yanamar. So they went back to Kinshasa trying to like mobilize and think about the future, right? What happened is that the government got really scared of them. The government. I mean, those guys who are buying big weapons and so on, right? The government got scared of people like us, looking like us, talking like us, right? And that's the story that that really wasn't on the media, I believe, because some of the people that are from Burkina Faso and Senegal, they were shipped back to their countries, but the Congolese that got arrested are still in prison right now. And those are people of our age and thinking exactly like us. So that's the story. It's called Filimbi.
That is really interesting.
We have a power.
No, I agree, and I think that's great. I completely agree. Okay, so I'm gonna kick it to Alpha.
Hi. What I think isn't really discussed much is the issue. This is a personal interest of mine, anyways. Issue with street children and like alcohol and substance abuse, as well as commercial sex work. I mean, it was a prominent issue a few years back, but I think kind of like the focus has shifted away really, and especially in Africa, there's a lot that still needs to be done with street children and like how their livelihoods, what livelihoods they get into, what type of things they do for survival, and I don't think much is being done. So I would like for that topic to be discussed more, really, but it's not in the media as much.
That's a good point, actually. In fact, when my parents talk about like street children in Nigeria, they talk a lot about how they're used by adults to make money, but there's no kind of idea of what happens to them, or even the concept of orphanages or adoption. You know, like if the government were to take care of children who have no one to take care of them. That's an interesting point. Vincent, you're up.
Okay. Since this is the last thing, I'm sorry I was not there for the first topic, but just to use like a minute to say what I want to say about it. It's good that 4 nations came together to actually fight against Boko Haram. It's wonderful, but I don't like the aspect that politicians are trying to use it again. It's stupid, it's dumb. It is not found anywhere in political science, which I studied as an undergraduate degree. So it is very dumb, and I hate it. Apart from that, my younger brother, who is actually in Nigeria right now, he's doing his NYSC. Ambuila, I'm going to say it again. You should go and do your NYSC. It's 1 year. It won't kill you.
Oh my goodness! Yo.
Vincent, I beg, answer the question.
Okay. But yeah, he said Buhari is winning. That's what he told me.
What the heck?
Yeah, that's what he told me. So I don't know if it's true. But what I think we should be talking about more is the issue of development. And I'm sure Alpha would actually kind of understand what I'm saying more. when it comes to development and when it comes to how Africa got its independence from Europe, which is still to me a fallacy because we are not still independent. But when it comes to independence, how and development, how is Africa kind of how are we modeling our own development? That's a question we should ask ourselves. And I don't think we are actually, because they are, I mean, all of us did geography at one point, and there was this issue about stages of development or economics, stages of development. And I'm sure we, or Africa, or African nations, maybe are not following those stages. And I think we should talk about how we got independence, if we are still independent, if we're economically, politically, or otherwise independent. And equally, we should talk about how, in a broader picture, I know I didn't talk about specifics like street children and any other thing, but in a broader picture, how does these all these development talk and all these development initiatives, which are so grandiose, how are they impeding us from actually developing? That's the question, because it's maybe somebody trying to feed you a goosey soup when you actually love amala. So that's just what I think we should be talking about every single day. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, I hit you. Go ahead.
Position. Vincent, right? Guy, funny. The Africa. I don't like when people just say Africa, 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 right? Because like they have so many nations in Africa, like over 50, right? And when you say Africa is not independent, what does that mean? Is the continent not
Countries.
independent? How
No,
does that relate? If you say that
countries.
one country is not, they're like 50 countries, so are the entire 50 countries not independent? Libya, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia never got colonized. I don't know if you know. So they've been independent like as far back as they can remember. So I like being specific or regional, because there's this thing we tend to do. We tend to put down ourselves. We tend to be racist. Internal racism, I think, Alpha or
Okay. I think that
I lost
actually. Hello? What?
Hello?
Okay, well, I was.
no, I said you said something. You like asked the question.
Yeah, I was. No, I like that because I think that regional identities kind of make sense because prior to the arbitrary lines that were drawn across certain fields on the continent, you'll find certain tribes on either side of the line. So sometimes regions will have more similarities than you can say, the continent. So
just like North Africa is more Middle Eastern, so to speak. I don't mean to entirely put it like that, but it's entirely different from what you find in South Africa. And you can't tell me that South Africa did not get their independence and say that Africa is not really dependent to you. I'm just saying. And the one thing I had in mind was, Rise Africa started, to connect youths, and we had this saying, Africa has done something, right? So I'm more of when I think about my country, when I think about other African nations, I tend to like, you asked about, what we think people should talk about more in the media. We know there's a lot of cons in Africa, in Nigeria, just the African nation. There's a lot of negativity, right? But those positives, those everyday positives that happen, they're still great. In education, in infrastructure, in living, in culture. Those are things that make us African or stand out. In terms of culture, I think we can use the word Africa. We can use the term Africa, to identify, and that's one very good thing. We talked about, children on the streets being used for this and that, but there's still children on the streets. I know this kid that back in my neighborhood, not in my neighborhood, but in my city, he used to fix electronics. He used to fix electronics, and I know this one time there was this kid on CNN from, I can't exactly remember, maybe Ethiopia. He was brought to the States to learn engineering because he was like a genius, and he used to, in his neighborhood, in the city where he was from, he used to fix a lot of stuff for people. And those little positives are still great to talk about that most people don't talk about. People like the interesting stuff. Oh my God, Boko Haram again. Oh my God, there's way war everywhere. This one of
You're right.
my graduate class said Africa's at war, right? I'm like, oh my God, no we're not. I was like, no we're not. I think you just mean Central
Can I
Africa.
ask you a question?
Yeah, man.
Right. So, but do you think the positives which you mentioned, do you think they outweigh negatives, the
I'm
issues
not.
that really
I don't.
account? Yes, we need to
No, I
praise,
don't.
but
I don't. But Rise Africa was all about pointing out the positives that are there. That's just all I'm saying. Oh, if I tell you Wahala we did now, if it even run, I swear down. If I tell you what happened, but I'm just talking about we live to make the positives, and we're gonna be the change. We're gonna be the positives.
I
Me, I know
like that.
Beulah
I
has
like that.
some thoughts on going back to Nigeria and doing a few stuff. I'm here to study. I've been coming here like all my life since I was a kid, so I can relate to both sides of the world, the Western world and Nigeria, and put that together and try and understand, the two sides of the two sides of the grass, I guess. I don't know. Green. They're both green to me. But yeah, I'm not saying that the positives outweigh the negatives. I'm a Wahala day, man. But I'm just
Well,
saying Rise Africa is all about, Africa being done suffering and pointing out the positives and making things better.
Mm.
so, okay. I think it hits you whenever you talk. Like, there's so much in what you're saying. But so what I'm going to say and what I'm going to pull out of that is, and also kind of out of Alpha's pushback. And I'm just going to say, Alpha, I appreciate the fact that you push back, even if there's like even if everybody's on the same bandwagon. You push against certain perceptions, and I think that that's valuable because as we talk about things like the Renaissance and being the change and moving forward and development and the positives of the African continent, I think that we're not striving for a different single story, to borrow Chimamanda's phrase. We're looking for a balanced story, a true story, and that is going to require us to acknowledge the good and the bad. So I'm just going to say that this has probably been one of my favorite chats. I wish that there was a little bit more time for us to go into more depth with, the different topics, but I really love what you guys brought to each topic, each question. And part of the reason why I asked for the topics that you guys are interested in is so that I have some new stuff to look into, so thank you. And who knows, it may come up in a future community chat. But
Yeah,
for right
we do
now,
about that.
um, those are all the questions. And hopefully you guys take that last question offline and explore it a little bit. But that's the end of this mini chat. And I just want to thank all of you for taking the time, coming out, sharing, being open, and having a really, I would say, really deep and insightful discussion. I wish more of this. I wish I saw more of this out in the world, and I hope that we can make that happen. So thank you so much for you all coming.